This case stemmed from the investigation into a robbery murder at the Glatz jewelry store, in which Mr. Glatz was killed during a shootout with one of the perpetrators in an attempted robbery case. At the time, a suspect who entered the store escaped, and there was a search to identify that individual. An alternate suspect who actually fit the witness's description was identified by multiple witnesses, and subsequent to that, a jailhouse informant nominated Obina Onyiah as being the supposed suspect in that murder. He ultimately gave a false confession to then Detective James Pitts, and that confession, the evidence showed, was the result of then Detective Pitts using unlawful force against Mr. Onyiah during the course of the interrogation. Years later, when Mr. Onyiah tried to challenge that confession as being the product of physical coercion, then Detective Pitts lied under oath, and he did so with the intent to obstruct justice. And then a week later, at the jury trial, when Mr. Onyiah tried to challenge that confession as being the product of physical coercion, then Detective Pitts again lied under oath about the circumstances of taking that confession with the intent to obstruct justice. Years later, when we were investigating his claims on post-conviction review, we hired some of the best experts in photogrammetry, which is the science of determining the height of objects and individuals in three-dimensional space. Those top experts analyzed the video of the robbery murder and determined that Mr. Onyiah could not have been the perpetrator who was captured on video. Mr. Onyiah is 6'3", and the experts determined that the perpetrator who was captured on video could not have been. The experts determined that based on the height analysis, Mr. Onyiah could not have been the perpetrator. Mr. Onyiah's conviction was vacated on appeal, and then he bravely testified at a jury trial against Mr. Pitts. And Mr. Pitts was convicted of perjury and obstruction of justice by a jury of his peers back in July.
As Mike said, our prosecution was for both perjury and obstruction of justice for Pitts's intentional actions in this case. So Mr. Obina Onyiah is obviously a direct victim who suffered unique and severe harms from this case. He spent over 11 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. However, this case goes well beyond just the one singular victim. The entirety of the criminal justice system has suffered as a result of former Detective Pitts' actions, as well as the community and the trust that the community has in the criminal justice system and policing in particular.
I want to thank Mr. Onyiah, who bravely faced his abuser in court and testified truthfully under oath, as well as an additional eyewitness who was traumatized by the experience of being at Homicide when this happened, and she also courageously testified in the presence of her abuser, so we thank them. So I'd like to thank a lot of the folks who helped conduct this investigation and this prosecution that involves the Philadelphia Police Department's Internal Affairs Unit, in particular Investigative Support Services, which is a division of Internal Affairs. I'd also like to thank our county detectives or DA detectives who worked on this case, as well as our partners at IRS Criminal Investigations.